Good news, everybody. You're Pexin with the Legends. We are your hosts from the Gamer.com editing team. My name is Eric, and this week I am the man behind the curtain because I have a wonky eye, and you don't need to see that.
My name is Whitney. You can call me Lumbago, and I am really psyched. You see all this lovely artwork behind me? Well, I just finally finished my Loba ult, so this
Beautiful.
was a fair
Looking
amount of
good.
painting involved. I was telling them earlier before we started this that I always think it's going to take like a half an hour, and it takes like 4 hours to do one of these. So I'm very happy it is done just in time for there to only be a few more weeks till a new legend, presumably.
Yeah.
And I am Andrew. Catch me streaming on Twitch at FinnTTV. Very redundant. Finn PHIN. And yeah, let's jump into it.
So wait, Whitney, how are you going to reorganize your background now for the new tile?
You know, it's because it's not really going to fit. But I figured I would just take off one of the legends that I don't really like as much.
Discrimination?
I'm not sure. Yeah, right. I mean, Octane's not that like definitely needs a buff. So if maybe Loba goes there, Octane can go up here.
Oh
Who
man,
else am I like?
brutal.
Yeah, really just that.
Just Octane.
I'm trying to think who else. Like Lifeline's a little underrated, but I still like her. Or a little
right.
not underrated, but like a little could use a little buff.
Well, hopefully,
Actually,
enough new legends will come that you'll be able to fill the whole background with them all. So.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things to talk about today. It's been actually kind of a big week for Apex. We, of course, have our fifth hunt. This is the beginning of week 6. But we also have a little bit spoily leaks come out about what might be coming. We have some updates about the bunkers. And we have a big reveal coming tomorrow during the EA stream. So let's start with that. Not too sure what to expect, but tomorrow's EA Play Live is at 4 o'clock Pacific, and it's the live stream for all of EA's upcoming games, what they normally would be doing during E3. And they have already confirmed that there will be Apex news, and basically all it said was what's next for Apex. So
I like it.
Yeah. So last year they did something similar, but I wish I had looked this up. I don't specifically recall what was revealed during last year's. It was kind of weird. They didn't do a presentation, a normal press conference last year. They had like this EA Play Live where you could go outside near the convention center and play EA games, and they just kind of rolled some trailers during that. And there was an Apex announcement. I don't remember what it was. Do you guys remember last year?
I don't have any familiarity with the event.
It feels like it might have been. What if it was this? It might have been like the season 2 launch, maybe.
Yeah, it
time.
would have been around this time. Yeah. So there's a couple things we've gotten from both hints in game as well as data mines. Some players have noticed, I don't know if you guys actually got to see it yourselves, but some players have noticed some banners that look a little bit different. Have you seen this, Whitney?
I only saw it on Reddit, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew, did you see it in game?
I did not.
I haven't seen it in game either, but I really wanted to. They seem to be crypto themed, but essentially they are just green banners with some lines of binary on them instead of showing the champions. And if you read the binary, it says, "If you can see me, I can."
Whoa.
Yeah. So there's a lot of speculation about what that could mean. It kind of, to me, sounds like if you can see me, I can blank. Like, if you can see me, I can see you, or if you can see me, I can something, because it's not really a full sentence, is it?
Yeah.
So
intentionally ambiguous, and I don't like it.
Yeah. So that's led a lot of people to believe that we are in store for a crypto takeover.
That'd be cool. I loved what he did to when he hacked in and everything. I thought it was amazing. Kings Canyon. So
yeah.
Cool. He had one of the coolest legend entrances ever with that stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that was probably the coolest lead up to a legend we've ever had.
Yeah.
Now this is. Go ahead, Whitney.
I was going to say, it is interesting though, because if we're thinking of like a crypto theme event, we don't know a lot about crypto. All we know is like the numbers and we know like the hacking. So, we just saw like the Mirage Voyage over the holidays or whatever whatever. And that one really makes sense. He's like Mr. Cool Party guy with the bar. They had the pork chops going and all.
Yeah.
Wraith Labs also kind of made sense since we know like her story. Um, the Bloodhound event completely made sense. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what they've come up with for a Crypto Town takeover.
Yeah, it's a good question because like you were saying, the town takeovers so far have either been plot related like Wraiths or personality related like Mirage and Octane, right? Their town takeovers really reflect like who that character is in a way that I don't know how that will work for crypto or what it could even be to reflect crypto. The speculation right now is that it's the tower. The sorry, what's the real name for the tower on Kings Canyon?
The cage. Is
The
that what you're talking
cage,
about?
yeah.
Okay.
That the cage is turning into a crypto themed area. But what could that be, Andrew? What do you think?
What would the how it manifests in
Yeah,
cage?
yeah. What would a crypto themed cage be?
To me, it would make sense if they were some underground aspect related.
Ooh.
Like if it was connected to the vaults, or even if it was the vaults, and it's all connected, and that's what that is. Because he seems like the guy, at least, to have a lot of these underground hideouts where he's been doing X, Y, and Z, trying to, hack in and get revenge or whatever. And I don't know if that would necessarily happen at Cage or with the vaults themselves. But if they're simply revamping Cage and they're already planning on opening vaults, and if they're unrelated, then I suppose all they would do with Cage is just probably put more cover on it and add in a lot of electric theme stuff, computers, all that stuff. So that could be the way they approach it. It's hard to say.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
You land in Cage, and then you just spend like the 20-minute game just like hacking at a computer, and you win that way.
And it's just Galaga. Where you play it through Apex.
So I think.
Like,
oh, sorry.
I was just gonna keep going with the jokes.
Yeah. We
time in like camp, and then that's the win.
we have to lean into the hacking for crypto. So maybe one idea would be there are a lot of terminals all around the cage, and activating them maybe opens or locks doors or activates traps in the cage or something. I think they could add just terminals that you interact with that do something.
Yeah, like a security system, especially if it has to do with, like a hideout of his. I don't know. That would be really cool. I want lasers.
I would love to see like a panic room style thing where like when you activate the terminal, all the walls in Cage like drop down and seal you in it or something.
That would be awesome.
What if it was like a PvE thing like Bloodhound? And there was something you had to fight in Cage.
Nessie.
Oh my god. Nobody's gonna let you fight Nessie.
True. Too cute.
Yeah, it's tough to tell what a crypto event would be. I think some of the other ones are a lot more obvious, like the Octane one. You would assume that it would just be a bunch of jump heads everywhere, and it is. So,
well, for what you're saying there, I do think it's worth mentioning for the PvE element that originally what he did was he hacked the tower, which allowed the sort of beast to come into Kings Canyon.
Yes.
And then when we came back to Kings Canyon, like the Leviathans were no longer in Kings Canyon, but the flyers are still there, right? So I'm just thinking about like the lineage of how that went. So maybe there is still some PvE element, like maybe within the lore it wasn't fully fixed, or they were fine having the wildlife, but I don't know.
Right.
Like
so
the idea of like duck hunt with lasers and flyers.
Repulsor has been repaired, so that's why the Leviathans left the island. But if there was somewhere else on the map that crypto could hack and change, that could be the direction they're going to. It's interesting. I don't suspect it's going to tie into the story of the season, though. At least it doesn't seem that way. Crypto isn't really a big part of the story at all.
Right.
unless he is suddenly going to be the center
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
wondering if they're
story.
misleading us here and letting him skate by on purpose in the shadows so that he ends up being maybe the Revenant informant. Maybe he has a reason to help the other side, specifically Hammond. You know,
He could
this
be the
all
mole.
other, yeah, and the story has to do with coding that relates to simulacrums or whatever they're called, and he obviously is well versed in the coding arts.
Mhm.
So
The
that
c-
could be that could be, a thing. Who knows?
Well, and it's interesting to see. I mean, we sort of know, and maybe you're going to go into this, that like there is a lot of content planned out for Apex in the future. So we're still kind of in a phase where they're just still kind of introducing us to these characters if it goes on as long as we want it to, right? And
Mhm.
every season, if they're really theoretically going to add a new legend every season, then that does shuffle up the dynamic of how the storytelling actually works. So, it doesn't surprise me that we're still not that deep into crypto's story, and it's probably going to be seeded very, very slowly. Like, this may reveal a few clues, but not really answer any questions. Because the reality of this is that they do have to keep the story going for some amount of time, right? And I think it's really interesting that they have to keep doing it by adding new characters, which, from a storytelling perspective, I mean, I just feel like it's 101. Like, don't just try to keep telling your story by constantly adding new characters.
Right.
But maybe it's not 101, maybe it's 102, but still, so it will be really interesting to sort of see, how they pepper in these clues over the long term. Because
Right.
I mean, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for anybody, but they've said like publicly that they're already into like season 10 in terms of what they're offering, and we're on season 5 right now. That's like another year and a half of content almost, right? So,
Yeah. I think it's clear that they have things that are planned out pretty far in advance. I think when we talk about with events like town takeovers and stuff like that, the introduction of a progressive narrative plot through the season adds a new layer to these kind of events, because you have to wonder now how they'll tie into the stories that we're being told, because now Apex is an evolving world more so than just like these self-contained events, you know.
mm-hmm.
So as much as I would like to see whatever this crypto takeover is going to be tie into the story, I don't expect it. What I did expect to tie into the story was the bunkers, and that's the next thing we have to talk about today. Last week, I theorized that this week's hunt would open a bunker, and then next week we would see that bunker open in the map. That was not the case. Now, some players have seen a timer on some bunkers. I don't recall specifically which bunker, but one of them has a 1 week timer that started yesterday. So we
Okay.
know a bunker is going to open next Tuesday. And I
Mhm.
suspect that's going to get revealed during the EA stream tomorrow. But what I'm not too sure now is if that is actually going to connect to the story. When we originally discovered last week that there was a 1 week delay between the opening of a bunker and when it actually opens, I assumed that meant we would open it in the story beforehand, but maybe next week we'll actually open the bunker that opens in the game, like at the same time. Or maybe it won't tie into the story at all, and it'll just pop open one day.
I feel like it's got to. They're so intricate with a lot of the stuff they've been doing. Like if I was a betting man, I would say they're tying it in some way.
I mean, even that Revenant Halloween event last year was just like, okay, this is kind of out of nowhere. We get that you're introducing a new legend. And the fact that they're calling it back a year later
Yeah.
and saying, like, in different ways, like, no, there's this actually other world that you can go to. Okay, now it's like really a part of the lore, but they just gave us a tease. So I want to say, from a storytelling perspective, it doesn't really make sense for them to add elements that aren't actually um, contributing to the larger story, right?
Right.
So I feel like every single piece, we just have to be diligent. We have to be like our like detectives with microphone glass and just looking at every single clue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the takeovers haven't really tied into anything narrative. I mean, I don't think Bloodhounds or Octanes or Mirages have been very story related. They're more just revamps, right?
Well, Wraith's
Wraiths,
Labs
yes.
definitely did,
Good
and
point.
Crypto was sort of like lurking there.
Yeah.
And I think that you might maybe could make an argument that Bloodhounds did tie in because they did that really cool graphic type thing, and it hasn't necessarily furthered the story, but it gives us a little bit of the character's
True.
backstory. So, um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I feel like if it's a big reveal like this, like it's not just them being like, and we're doing another Evo Shield mode. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
something pretty cool on the horizon. And they do tend to, I mean, I don't want to like predict, like pretend I know how to predict their cycle, but it is about halfway through the season. I think we're a little bit before. And it would be about time for them to introduce a cinematographic. That's the right word, right?
I'm not
An
sure.
animatronic.
Yeah, I don't
Wait,
know.
I was gonna
I
say
always say
animatronic, but that's
cinematic.
like the robots, right? So a cinematic. It would make sense for them to introduce it pretty soon, right? So maybe we are gonna get more info on who Crypto really is, or how he ties in with Wraith, because we know that there's some connection there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I think that event will get revealed tomorrow, and I think it'll probably start like this weekend, right?
Mm.
Because we are at like this halfway point in the season. So you're both still thinking that that the bunkers are part of the story?
Well, I don't really have any evidence for it. I just think it would I hope, I guess. It's just a hope. Like
Well,
but who
I'm
knows?
gonna interrupt you and jump right in here. No, sometimes I get excited and I just can't like hold my tongue. Anyway, but Loba destroying Skulltown was a map change that was also heavily invested in the storytelling, right?
Oh yeah.
So I do feel like when they do introduce, you know, and I'm trying to think on World's Edge specifically, like that was technically part of a storyline when they revamped the entire map. And that was like was that a mid-season change? That was a mid-season change, right? That they like just decided to rip Capital City in half. And that was with that whole
Yeah.
harvester situation. So I do feel like there must be story elements that are coming if we do go into those bunkers at all. Like I don't feel like it's doesn't. I feel like there's something to be discovered there,
Yeah.
right? And there's some tie in there. That's my feeling, just based on what we've seen. I think early on with, for example, like the Octane takeover, that was really really early, and maybe they hadn't quite figured out how to write stories like that into the game, because I think it was the first one. Um, but now they're sort of maybe moving toward the thing where just like, oh, if we're going to add something to the story, we want to figure out, I'm sorry, if we're going to add something to the game, we also want to figure out how it ties in with the story.
I kind of hope it'll be sort of like a Forge type debate where you open the first vault we finally get to see, and it's like it's like as deep as a bucket, and there's just a Mozambique there. That's all there is. And then everybody's like, I hate this game. And then next week it's huge. It's like the second vault actually has.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't want that to happen. I'd be
What if
sad.
we find Forge in King's Canyon, one of the bunkers?
But it's just like his body.
It's
Oh, he's still dead. They just put him in here.
they've really set themselves up here. It's essentially a Chekhov's bunker. We expect so much from these bunkers now because they've been here for 6 weeks, and we know that they're going to get open soon. It's like, man, there's got to be more in there than a Mozambique, right? I'm dying.
Schrodinger's bunker. There's a cat in there, but like, you know, whether or not it exists depends on if we open it.
Yeah.
They like offer us a choice.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like
I
a
feel
moral
like
dilemma.
I do feel like for the past seasons, they've added something mid-season that's kind of switched it up a fair amount, you know?
Yeah. I guess sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. I
The
was just saying more of the same thing.
the next question then is the crypto takeover and the bunkers connected? Is this one event? Or are those two totally separate things that are going to happen?
I mean, I would theorize only because his whole thing is like a hacking device and these bunkers are locked, right?
Yeah.
So he has this hacking device that is somehow doing something with these bunkers. And also his story originated on King's Canyon, remember?
Right.
That's important to remember as well. And race as well. So
Yeah.
something weird happening there.
Yeah, we'll get into the story for this week momentarily, but Crypto doesn't really have much to say about anything that's going on. So I know we touched on this earlier, but it will kind of come out of nowhere if suddenly he has a huge impact on getting the bunkers open, but also like the narrative of the season. That'll be a big surprise, I think.
Well, and it is interesting too, because when you think about like this traditional like television show structure, they usually go with the A line and the B line and the C line. Like that's
Sure.
the sort of thing. And again, you can talk about why or why that doesn't work, given like episode breaks. What's it called? Commercials? I forgot what they were called for a second because I don't watch them anymore. But I think they're up against a different challenge where you don't really have as much of an opportunity to make a clear A, B, C storyline. So it is interesting to think about how they're trying to tell sort of parallel stories. And also there's a lot of time shifting that's like happened throughout too. Like I know that like the Wraith story took place just before she came to King's Canyon,
Right.
even though the labs didn't appear till halfway through the season. So uh I'm very intrigued, and I do think that there's gonna be some tie-in.
Yeah.
That's what I feel in my gut.
Yeah, I think you made a good point. It's definitely conceivable that Crypto's the one that needs to open these bunkers through hacking magic, and that will lead us into this crypto takeover event. I think conceivably they are all connected, but it's kind of funny to talk about just because we're going to find out tomorrow, and that's ideally what I would want to see.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
me, the more of it being interconnected, like a conspiracy web, the better. That's what I want. I want everything to be tied in. But that's a lot of work. That takes a lot of forethought. So we'll see.
and we gotta like sort of, well, maybe this is for next week's episode, but like think about the clues that we know that Crypto's sister, adopted sister, is missing. We know that he had some data that helped them figure out the algorithm for who was going to win the games. And then in this season, we sort of understand that they're building some kind of technological aspect, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Um, and Crypto seems to have some understanding of what this thing is. So it will be interesting to see. I mean, maybe if it's time, we can jump into that lore piece so I can sort of give more context to what I'm trying to portray.
Let's talk about this week's hunt. There's the lore piece and the gameplay piece, but I have to jump ahead. I can't contain myself because I figured out what the artifact is, and I can't believe it took me to week 5 to figure out what we're building. I feel like such a dum-dum, Andrew.
Why is that directed at
me? Because I wanted to see the blank look on your face because you actually didn't figure out what. I feel like it's probably pretty obvious to someone at this point. I feel dumb for not seeing it. Whitney, you already knew because of the leaks, and Andrew, you saw it too, right?
Uh-oh. Well, what do you think it is?
Yes, I know exactly what we are building.
Now that we've got this 5th piece, it kind of all came together, and I went back and read the descriptions, and it totally makes sense. I sent you a picture, Andrew. Of
yeah,
it,
I haven't opened it as per instruction.
Yeah, well,
I waited.
You probably saw it when you finished the hunt, but take a look at that picture and see if you can tell what that's supposed to be.
That looks like Captain America's mask from the Avengers.
Right, we're building a head.
Building Captain America.
We're building Captain America. So we've been speculating even as recently as last week about what it could be, if it's a gate or if it's some kind of tool, but we are actually building a head. That's a face. Yeah. And so
I thought you had figured out more than just the face part. I thought it was like, we know everything.
No, nobody has ever said that it was a face, not on the show.
Yeah. But still, I mean, I'm unimpressed. It's like, okay, cool, it's a face.
Well,
what about it? All right.
Okay, so there's a little more. There's a little more, right? Because we got into some of the nitty-gritty details about what the source code is in the lore this week. So let's pause that really quick and let's back up. We'll talk about the hunt itself.
Okay.
Which starts in the bunker runs through the bunker, and ends outside the bunker. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this week's hunt.
You kill prowlers in the bunker.
It's interesting. Like, I mean, I guess I was hoping definitely that they would be more mini games or more like tactical or strategy or something. I don't know what I hoped, but it feels like, I don't say a letdown because it's just kind of like fun, but like I feel like it's like kind of like prize at the bottom of cereal box as opposed to like, something you can really sink your teeth into. And maybe the lore folks wouldn't agree because they do get a lot of story every time they do one of these. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like target practice, right?
100%.
It's just shooting straight down a hallway.
Yeah. And I mean, the ambiance is cool, but I think we've talked about it multiple times. I mean, they're pretty similar across the board. Just got to stay alive and shoot those beasts. And then they've been turning into shadow beasts halfway through, or there's one that we turned into a shadow beast at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. From week
really,
one, we essentially discussed that this was the likely way that they would unfold, is that they're just going to be like this, and they're going to continue to do it to advance the story, but they're all going to be similar in length, just like that first one when that was all we had, and they're going to be featuring different parts of the map, so not a lot of variation.
Watch the next one be like this, like 2-hour like interlude where you're like,
and then the one after is like another short one that has nothing to do with it.
There was two reasons I was bummed out about the actual hunt this week. One is my fault because I hyped myself up thinking we were going to go into this bunker.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't happen. So that's my fault.
I mean, we technically did go into a bunker.
Yeah. And then the second thing is that they have been evolving every week. They've been getting either longer, more complex. They have, week 2 introduced a story beat with Watson, and then we had new gameplay stuff the following week where you became a Revenant form. Last week we had all the jump pads, and this week was just as basic as week 1. You just went through bunker and hit some panels to open the door. It was like a step back in complexity, and it was. I think it was disappointing. If this had been the week 2 hunt and not the week 6 hunt, I'm sorry, I guess it would have been week 3. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. It seemed like a step back in complexity and interesting gameplay.
Yeah, now that I think about it, you're totally right. Because even though I like to flatten it all down to, they're all pretty basic, we were kind of getting better and better content. And this is the first week that was like markedly not as good as the week before.
Right. So the only sort of unique piece about this week is that we found Octane. So we got that story beat in at the very beginning. He's lying half dead outside the bunker.
Yeah, we didn't even get any dialogue, right? Because I remember dropping in and just seeing him there. I was like, huh? Is that Octane's dead?
Yeah.
And then I just kept going. It was just like it wasn't like Watson where there was like at least a mini dialogue sequence about it. It was just like, oh, there's dead Octane. Let's keep going.
And he had a death box with just a Mozambique in it.
Yeah. That was a meme.
So in the subsequent story that you read afterwards, I was confused because when they bring Octane in, they make a point of saying he didn't have legs. But did the model on the ground have legs? Am I crazy?
Okay, here's the thing. I'm almost positive it was a joke. Like that was the joke was that, and his legs are missing, as if it had just happened to him, but he's never had legs. So I think they meant it literally, like he doesn't have his like literal legs, and it was
really
they literally made a joke. I'm almost positive they made a joke. Yeah, that's how it came across to me.
Is that how you read it, Whitney?
No,
that's not how I read it.
He had legs. I didn't catch whether or not he had legs at the beginning. I wasn't paying attention.
It looked like his regular model to me. Yeah.
And
I wish he would have been there with no legs.
On top of that, when you click to reveal that line in the lore, there's like a sound like it's this big reveal. Like there's no way it's not a joke to me. Like, okay, how could they make us take it seriously?
If that was a joke, it went way.
No legs. I'm just kidding.
Like, especially with the sound cue that comes in. Like, to me, it was just like Punchline City. However, if we all happen to miss it and we're all wrong and the model actually didn't have legs, then shame on me.
I think we all would have noticed if he didn't have legs.
Yeah, I think we would have noticed.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, because they said that Octane, they were changing up Octane and it wasn't able to make it into the patch for the beginning of this season, right?
Stop it.
What if they
No.
took out his legs in this
No.
mode and then they're making him better legs
Whitney.
so he has
He's
a
just,
better
like, in a wheelchair.
What? He's got
better
rocket
option?
legs. He's in a wheelchair.
He's like, SpaceX designed a new or he's like in a wheelchair and he just becomes Professor X. He has the exact same abilities as Professor X. They really changed Octane.
Okay, but like, what if I'm right?
Well, if you're right, then I'm disappointed in the devs for not doing the very least and removing his legs in the
Yes.
model, because that's really misleading.
Right.
If we're supposed to go on the lore and they're just like, well, we don't really have time to not make him look exactly how he is in the story, which is a big deal if he doesn't have his legs. Like,
Right.
this isn't like a change the color of his shirt thing. He doesn't have legs in story. We need to see that when he's dead there in the body. And if you don't have time, then don't put the body. Just put his death box with his name on it or something.
Or don't
But
say he's missing his legs.
Yeah, to me, it was a joke. It was like, and if it's not, I'm like, I will be shocked. But I already am questioning myself. I'm like,
I want to believe you.
Mate.
I want to believe it was a joke because when I saw it, I was like, once again, the gameplay is not lining up with the narrative. They're literally saying he doesn't have legs, but I looked at him and he had legs.
Maybe they fell off and they picked them up. But like, I was literally laughing out loud in my room alone when I read that. I don't know.
I
It's
also
crazy.
do feel like it's in line with the dev's sense of humor. I mean, these are
Sure.
the same people who gave us Forge and then took them away, right?
And they put a Mozambique in his death box. If that's not supposed to be a joke, I don't even know what to believe anymore.
All right. I will let that one slide because I'm not sure anymore either.
I don't know either. Well, I guess we'll find out.
When he gets super bionic legs, because I'm right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really be that surprised if Whitney's right.
I wouldn't be that surprised, and I definitely wouldn't be mad. That would be very funny.
I'd be face palming.
Yeah. So I don't think that this week's story was particularly impactful, but there are some points to talk about. It essentially picks up right where last week left off with Bangalore confronting Loba and revealing to the rest of the group that the entire reason we're collecting all these artifacts is because Loba wants to trade whatever we're building for the information about where to find the source code. And the source code is Revenant's brain. It's his bionic or not. It's his biological self, right?
Yeah, it's Revenant in his most true form.
Yeah,
and we're just kind of confirming what we already felt like. Because remember,
this was all explained. I think. I don't think any of this was
Yeah.
new information.
yeah, exactly. So
They
it's
just advanced the information we knew
to the
this
character.
story.
Yeah, the characters are now caught up with us. So it's actually Caustic that explains it. And what I found interesting about his explanation was that a typical simulacra has the organic brain matter that makes up who that person is still inside their robot body. But he said in this case with Revenant, it's not in the source code. Who Revenant is not inside Revenant's body. That's what makes Revenant unique. So that's not the way your typical simulacra or bionic person, I guess, would operate, right?
Well, because theoretically, like, you know, in the Titanfall universe, it's my understanding anyway. I just sort of know secondhand. But anybody who was like a simulacrum was somebody that they had still had their spine and their brain or something like that, and they sort of built the bionic body onto it. So what we're saying here is essentially like we have taken your brain. And I'm just imagining almost like the like head in a bucket from Futurama or something.
Yeah.
And then they've just like sort of pumped the juice into each robot every different time, right? Which is but it's all done, I guess, like like I don't want to use that electronically, but it's like done through data physically.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
In fact, a lot of like IRL transhumanists, so they're called, believe the most like feasible form of singularity is via uploading one's consciousness to like a database. So that's essentially, I guess, what we're dealing with Revenant is there's an original, and they've made a bunch of copies of separate of.
Which presumably also isn't news either, Just because we
Yeah.
sort of saw this at the beginning when we saw what Loba was after and she took the shot and, you know, because she was trying to get to the source of like
Mhm.
all these different revenant bodies. But it
Exactly.
really does just like confirm, yeah, we know.
It kind of sort of just contextualizes that opening cinematic we got at the trailer where she saw the source. We saw it. We know what it looks like. I think it was that, right? And then she failed to destroy it. And then surrounding it were all of the copies that I suppose that's
Yeah.
the process of getting uploaded to those bodies over and over. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that there was anything revelatory here. The major plot point from this week is essentially because everyone now knows Loba's plan, that means whoever the mole is, whoever leaked to Revenant that what Loba and everyone is up to, can now go back to Revenant and tell him exactly why they're trying to get the artifact, which will obviously be a problem for Revenant because the entire team is now willingly collecting these pieces to kill him,
Right.
and so he will want to stop them. So that's sort of where everything comes to a head this week. There was a question I had about something lore related. I'm not sure if you guys know going back, but I think it was Mirage that asks Bangalore, you're from whatever this initialism is, and so is Hammond. So why don't you trust them?
IMC, yeah. So we have Bangalore, and she is somebody who's like we know from her past that she fought for the IMC, and what she's saying in this, and like IMC is one of the parties that was involved in this frontier war that had happened long before the events of Apex Legends, right?
Yeah.
But she um she is saying that like yes, Hammond, is IMC, IMC is Hammond, but this Hammond that is going after this creature is not the company or is not the group that I fought
Right.
for. And I sort of have to like look back to give it more context, but like, we sort of understand that this IMC group, like lots of the team members have some level of stake in it, right? We know that Ford was a product of Hammond Robotics. We know that I want to say, I can't remember, I believe that maybe Lifeline's parents were involved somehow. I can't remember if they were IMC or the other side, but she kind of is not fond of her parents because, well, I don't know if that's entirely true, but they're on different sides, right? So basically, I think what we're sort of saying is this idea that these are some group of radicals or rogue from Hammond. Like it's different, it's changed, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting because Bangalore is going to probably be key because she does understand the IMC and she does know their motivations and she might have a better understanding of the sort of interplay between why this group might have spun off as well, which will be interesting, again, because we're going to this. I mean, I have like a lot of other thoughts right now too. It's like, why is this thing that we're digging up like hidden in the Revenant underworld as opposed to the current world? And what are these two sort of different phases, not phases, that's not the word, dimensions, say about sort of the state of the planet in what we're in right now?
Right.
Like, what is the present, right? Like, what is the actual present, right? So,
Yeah, I kind of wanted to end things with a little bit more speculation about the artifact. I guess we kind of do this every week now, but now that we're getting a sense of what it is some kind of simulacra head, and all of the pieces are pieces. Now it makes sense. We have like the occipital array, and the description for that was windows without a soul. So this is a non-humanoid, I guess not a simulacra, right? This is like more like a Pathfinder that we're building, like a true robot person. But what is it? What are we doing? Any new ideas?
I mean,
Not specifically.
New character?
I just suspect, I suspect that at best this lore will tie into the new legend and we're building the new legend. But likely whatever it is a weapon that Hammond would like to yield in order to increase their power and influence and profit, I'm sure. Like that's vaguely what to me seems to be inevitable.
And I do think, if we're thinking about this, Hammond had invested in Forge, right? That's we know. This is like a product of Hammond Robotics, right? And then they lost Forge. So it kind of makes sense within the context of the lore to say, well, we need something that's going to be able to take on really Revenant, right? And so what can we do? And we go to this thing that's buried in Revenant's land. And I want to like say that like I feel like I brought this up before, and this may be pretty out there, but I talked about how in Titanfall 2, there's that sort of zone that you like flash into one time period or one dimension, the other dimension. And I'm wondering if we're just looking at two sides of this. And I'd have to go back and look to remember like what we fight Ash in, but I'm wondering if that is like the creature that we're picking up is from this other dimension. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they're trying to bring it back to the present in the same way that we sort of understand this dimensional shift is possible.
Yeah. So here's my current theory, and it builds on exactly what you just said. So, yes, Hammond wanted a legend in the game. That was supposed to be Forge, but then that didn't happen. So Hammond still wants a legend in the game. The reason this is the legend they want and not just some other fighter is because in the world where Revenant is in charge, this character was buried in multiple pieces all around the world, which leads me to believe that this character is a threat to Revenant. And so the reason that we're putting him together for Hammond is because Hammond knows that this character is powerful enough to oppose Revenant.
I also kind of pieced together a theory that I think can tie into what you're saying and perhaps make it more complete. And this is partially biased because I want to tap, but potentially this is my theory, and it's less to do with reasoning and more to do what this could manifest as. If they are going to resurrect Forge, which I think would be great, because we're talking about this is actually more feasible than they're resurrecting Forge. They Forge was the original legend that they had recruited to represent them in the Apex games, so that's still an objective there. So this could tie into that, right? With this, it'd be a playable legend for players. It'd be good, and Immortal. Think of the name Immortal.
Immortal.
That would be a good name. That would be a good name to resurrect.
That is one of the
Forge.
names.
And on top of that, Immortal is a nanobot user. And to me, that implies that Immortal himself is not quite human, and that he controls these nanobots because that's his like prerogative as an android, supposedly. So it would be really cool if they resurrected Forge as Immortal, who is a nanobot using Legend. And if I remember right, the abilities of Immortal were really cool. Specifically, I think as a tactical, unleashes a wave of nanobots that can either heal an ally's shields or dismantle an enemy's shields. And that's just one of his abilities.
Yeah.
So it would make sense with his name. It would be cool because it would tie into Hammond. Cool because it would resurrect Forge and make him seem even more complicated, not just sort of we tricked you. I don't know.
This is such a good idea. Between the three of us, I think we might have actually figured it out.
We cracked it. Let's put this on Reddit and get a lot of karma. I'm just kidding.
So we were going to get into all of the early leaked legends, but then we had so much news today. We're going to actually save that.
We'll do that later.
Yeah, we'll save that for later. But yes, Andrew brings up Immortal, which is one of the like very early leaked legends. And he had like a bit of a kit, but I love the idea of Forge coming back as Immortal. And that's who we're building. I think that's awesome.
Oh, and it is cool because they've always been saying over and over again, is Forge dead? Well, yes, but no. But
you're
yes,
right.
But no.
You're totally right. They have totally insinuated that they're not giving a clear answer on Forge.
Yeah.
And I wrote it off really early as like they're just still messing around with people.
Yeah.
But that would make a lot of sense. And plus, I don't think any of what I said is even incompatible with what y'all were talking about too,
right.
with the dimensional stuff too. It's like we don't really know anything about this creature or whatever it is, but it could simply be a shell, which could be a mean with the power or the means, to resurrect Forge. She was like one of the strongest humans ever, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think it's safe to assume that Revenant himself, evil Revenant, I guess, eviler Revenant, as we like to call him, was the one who buried all these pieces all around King's Canyon because of the threat it poses to him. Cool. That is a very good working theory, and I think that we're going to find out sooner than... I don't think we're necessarily going to have to wait till the end of the season to figure this out.
it'd be so cool if we were right. Knocking it out of the park.
It just... I know we have a lot of harebrained theories on this show, but like this one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Kind of all comes together. Yeah. Cool. So tune in for tomorrow's live stream. I think it's 4:00 Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. EA Play Live, probably on Twitch and YouTube and everywhere else. And then hopefully there'll be an event that starts this weekend, and we'll be able to talk about it on next week's show. Either way, we will have a new hunt, our 6th, and the first bunker will be open. Those two things I'm sure of. So let's do the plugs and we'll wrap it up. Whitney.
You can find me on Twitch. It's Lumbago, LUMBA3GO. Yay. I love it.
Nailed it.
PHINTTV on Twitch. Oh yeah.
And both of you have been streaming pretty consistently lately. So check those streams out. Both playing Apex and some other cool games. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.